A lot of supplement brands chase trends, but if you're serious about your health, we know research-backed science is what actually moves the needle. Momentous works with the best brains in human science to create every formula, and every batch is made of pure ingredients, tested for safety, and does not contain fillers. So you get the best long-term results possible. Creatine isn't just for muscle gains, it's essential daily fuel for your brain, body, and long-term performance. Momentous CreaPure Creatine is backed by leading performance experts like Dr. Andrew Huberman and Dr. Stacy Sims. Sourced exclusively in Germany, CreaPure sets the gold standard for creatine, delivering the purest form, creatine monohydrate, that's rigorously washed and never cut with fillers. With over 2,000 5-star reviews, over 112,000 customers have seen the results firsthand. With Momentous, the fundamentals are done right. Right now, Momentous is offering our listeners up to 35% off your first subscription order with promo code ACAST. Go to livemomentous.com and use promo code ACAST for up to 35% off your first subscription order. That's livemomentous.com, promo code ACAST.
If you're a smoker or vapor ready to make a change, you really only need one good reason. But with Zyn nicotine pouches, you'll discover many good reasons. Zyn is America's #1 nicotine pouch brand. Plus, Zyn offers a robust rewards program. There are lots of options when it comes to nicotine satisfaction. But there's only one Zyn. Check out zyn.com/find to find Zyn at a store near you. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Hello and welcome to 15 Days of Festive 2025, and we are on day number 5, and I am joined in the studio by the adventurous, the brave, the magnificent, and the eternally patient Tim Cloke. Hello, Tim.
I can certainly agree with the last one after the many hitches and delays we've had tonight. But hey, it's great to be back. It's lovely to be back so soon as well. We had a big delay the last time, didn't we?
Yes, we did. We had ages the last time, so it is lovely to be able to record with you this side of Christmas.
It really is. And it is just this side of Christmas as well. It is Christmas Eve as we record this.
It is Christmas Eve, and I can tell you now the recording has been as chaotic as it possibly could be. And I am going to warn you as the listener now that there is noise in my household. My housemate and his friends are downstairs making mac and cheese, which may add to the soundscape for this particular episode. The boiler has also just come on, and my laptop, which is on my lap because I am in bed recording this because I can't record downstairs, will inevitably overheat and therefore make a loud whirring noise. So I'd like to make everybody aware of these things before we start recording.
And likewise, we are recording remotely because I've not made it up to Canterbury this year. I've got the boiler that's probably about to kick in. I've got a very hungry cat who's about to kick my door down as well. So any noises like that tonight, they're not going to be paranormal, are they?
No, they are absolutely not going to be paranormal. Unless you hear some sort of demonic voice, which may or may not be paranormal, do please check in and we shall let you know.
We will certainly do that.
Tim, who are you? Why are you here?
Well, I'm here because very occasionally, in fact, more frequently this year, it has to be said, you invite me on your wonderful podcast to tell some stories with a bit of a historical theme, because that is my day job. I am a history teacher down in Devon. And I think we've done about 6 or 7 episodes this month, haven't we?
Yeah.
This year.
This year, yeah. We've done a good few episodes this year.
We have done very, very well. So I'm back again with more tales of folklore and ghosts and all sorts of mad things from my local area.
Which is very exciting. And your local area is where?
Well, I live down in the West Country of the southwest of England, a little county called Devon. It can feel very, very large because the roads may mean it takes ages to get anywhere. As many visitors know, one of my favourite places in Devon is Dartmoor. And although I've done several episodes on the folklore of Dartmoor before, I've got another one for you tonight. And this one, it may well be the last ever because I've done so many on it now. I've not run out of stories, but maybe it's time to move on to literally new territory. But I'm really excited to share more things.
And luckily, this episode is going to be a 2-parter.
It's going to be, is it? All right. Well, we've decided. All good.
Yes.
So this is all framed around one of my recent expeditions up on the moor. So I haven't got a very catchy title to it, but it's simply called Beat the 13 Tours.
Okay, can you explain what a tour is?
I have got a little bit about what a tour is within the
Brilliant.
sort of preamble to this, because people have asked me this before. I remember all those years ago, about 5 years ago now, wasn't it? You and Dan invited me on for the first go at my Dartmoor Tales. And I just sort of assumed naively that everyone knew what Dartmoor was and they knew what a tour was and that they know everything that I was talking about, which was completely untrue. We had a great time, but then loads of questions cropped up. So I always make sure that I put a little bit on at the start to explain what Dartmoor is, where it is, and what sort of things can be found there. But I think it's only fair to say, first of all, that this particular episode is dedicated to my friend Lucy, who joins me on this particular adventure. Most of the time I'm on my own on Dartmoor. Rightly or unwisely, that is the case. But this time I actually had some backup, and she's given me permission to use her name and to include her in these stories. So hopefully, Lucy, if you're listening, you'll enjoy it as well.
Yes, and we love you, Lucy. And
Yes,
I
indeed.
am very glad that you are able to accompany Tim on these journeys.
Well, we just discussed on Patreon, didn't we, the ridiculous Christmas-themed run that we did over the weekend. So it's not the first time this year that she's dragged me through the mud and water, and I've done the same for her. We're a good team.
Literally.
Absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? But hopefully we'll get some photos online as well for this one here as well. You see some of the sites we saw that day. It's going to be a little bit less tightly based around the route that I planned, because I didn't plan this particular route. As you're going to find out, this was part of an organised event. Whereas normally, if I'm going up on the moors, I've got half a mind of going, right, where am I going to plan my route so I can get as many paranormal sites in as possible? And that wasn't the case this time. So some of the segues are going to be a little bit more tenuous this time. Hopefully people will forgive me for that. And there will be times where I'm more describing the experience of being out on the moor. In a way, I think it is fair to say that this is my love letter to Dartmoor. And I hope that people will sense that from me and that they will enjoy coming on that journey with me.
I can only assume that they will. In fact, I'm absolutely sure that they will, given the amount of times that people are messaging me, being like, when is Tim coming back? Tim. We all love Tim. Well, guess what? He's back.
This is a regular thorn in the side of our friendship, isn't it, mate?
Well, I'm just going to have to get over it at some point.
You don't have to, because you get just as many messages. I've seen them that says, always remember that Emma's our number one, and they are quite right as well. You're there week in, week out, providing them with all the spooky content, and then just occasionally I'll turn up and do my bit and then disappear again for a month.
Shall we get cracking on your story?
Let's get straight into it. I've got a bit of an introduction. You'll find out a little bit more about Dartmoor, and we'll find out what adventures we got up to. Let's do it. Regular listeners will know of my love of the Devonshire wilderness of Dartmoor, a wild and sometimes forbidding upland region of southwestern England. I've made something of a habit in the last half decade or so of hiking up onto the high moor with nothing but my backpack and wits to protect me, and to camp under the stars in the shadow of the enigmatic Tors. Dartmoor Tors are outcrops of granite, moulded by weather and time into unique and seemingly impossible shapes. Formed from Dartmoor granite, a coarse igneous rock filled with white, black, grey and even pink crystals, Dartmoor has long been a source of this hardy stone for building. Bubbling up from the earth around 280 million years ago, the Dartmoor Tors were formed by the erosion of the softer soils and rocks around them, leaving monolithic masses of granite or, more often, irregular stacks or pillars of the rock. Rarely more than a few tens of feet high, their rounded, layered form make them easy to climb and instantly recognisable as they protrude from the rolling olive-green hills of the moor. Each has a name, and many have their own legends associated with them. This October, my friend Lucy and I decided to explore a decent portion of this craggy wilderness in a day only. Both of us have, in the last 2 years or so, been battling to recover from injuries, mine to my spine and hers to her shoulder. Lucy has cajoled me into strengthening up at a weekly fitness session, helped by the fact that this takes place above a pub, and I've convinced her to join me on runs like the Bedford Half Marathon, where neither of us had really prepared for it, but we got on with it anyway. Like most recoveries from serious injuries, we both have, and still have, times when recovery slips backwards, and times when progress seems to leap forward, but we're both proud of the way that we've got better, and both pester the other into continuing when the going gets tough. For anyone recovering from a long-term injury, get yourself a Lucy. They're great. At the start of 2025, after 1 or 5 jugs of cider, we found ourselves antisocially hunched over a smartphone checking out an advertisement. Beat the 13 tours, it said, all in aid of Marie Curie Cancer Care Charity. Here was another challenge to prepare for and a goal to set, all the while raising money that would help provide incredible nursing care to support families staring down cancer on all the cruelties that horrid disease brings with it. Both of our families had benefited from the charity, and with Lucy being a recently qualified and already hugely popular community nurse, it seemed the perfect thing to do. We signed up before the cider could wear off. For months, the date approached, like a train on an opposite track down a long straight, distant for so long, and then approaching with alarming rapidity until, in mid-October, the big day had arrived. Ahead of us was a 14-mile circular hike taking in 13 of Dartmoor's most formidable tours. But we knew that our training and the generosity of our sponsors, some of whom were listeners to this particular show, would see us through. As it happened, summiting each tour would represent raising about £100 for the charity, given what we had raised, and so we were good to go and well motivated. In these episodes, I shall tell the tale of our walk and a series of Dartmoor tales inspired by the scenery and sights we encountered as we beat the 13 tours. Any questions about our expedition before we get started?
No, I don't have any questions about your expedition just yet, but I really appreciated your explanation of what a tour was, because I actually kind of thought it was just a hill, and it isn't.
It sort of is. It's a hill with an
it's
exposed
a
rocky top to it, really craggy top to it. So yeah, there's a big kind of grassy slope that you usually need to go up first. But it's the what makes it a tour rather than a hill is the exposed granite pile that you find on top of it. Some of them big, some of them very small, some of them barely worthy of the name, but they're all completely unique.
See, that is interesting, and I did not know that, and I appreciate the information, and I do love that recognition of the fact that we often book these things, and I say we as people, as human beings, 5 drinks in, and then you wake up in the morning and you go, shit, now I have to do it.
Well, we were both still pretty injured when we did it as well, so October we're going to be fine, and then things happen along the way and you go, we should be okay. We didn't get anything like as many training walks in as we intended to, but we got in enough of them. And actually, as we found out, our base fitness was pretty good. So in a way, we're probably slightly over-prepared, but I'd rather be in that position than position. So that's all been really good. And again, just in case, I think I mentioned it, but some of the donations that came in for the charity did come from Real Life Ghost Stories listeners. So if you're one of them, thank you so much. It meant a huge amount. And thanks to you as well, Emma, for promoting it at the time. But if anyone's unfamiliar with Marie Curie and the work that they do, the nursing care that they provide people and families who are dealing with the effects of cancer, they are just the most incredible people. And especially for my friend Lucy, being a community nurse, often working with these people, she knows the good work that they did. So we really believed in what we were doing as well. So that made it a great motivator.
Yeah, and it's such a massive thing to do, to like a lot of these charities. I don't know how it is in other countries, but a lot of these charities, particularly in the UK, they rely hugely on public donations, on fundraising in order to continue doing the work that they do. It makes a massive difference when anything that people raise makes a massive difference to these charities. So well done, you guys, because it is, everybody listening to this podcast at some point is going to be impacted by cancer. Everybody, so it's a really important thing to raise money for.
Yeah, and they can never have too much. So it was really, really good to know that we'd been so well supported there. And of course, that is what gets us over the line eventually. But it was a great day out as well, as I hope will become apparent as we go through. Should we get into how our day began then?
Let's get into it.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/start. That's prolonlife.com/start.
A lot of supplement brands chase trends, but if you're serious about your health, we know research-backed science is what actually moves the needle. Momentous works with the best brains in human science to create every formula, and every batch is made of pure ingredients, tested for safety, and does not contain fillers. So you get the best long-term results possible. Creatine isn't just for muscle gains, it's essential daily fuel for your brain, body, and long-term performance. Momentous CreaPure Creatine is backed by leading performance experts like Dr. Andrew Huberman and Dr. Stacy Sims. Sourced exclusively in Germany, CreaPure sets the gold standard for creatine, delivering the purest form, creatine monohydrate, that's rigorously washed and never cut with fillers. With over 2,000 five-star reviews, over 112,000 customers have seen the results firsthand. With Momentous, the fundamentals are done right. Right now, Momentous is offering our listeners up to 35% off your first subscription order with promo code ACAST. Go to livemomentous.com and use promo code ACAST for up to 35% off your first subscription order. That's livemomentous.com, promo code ACAST.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. You know, one of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. Mm-hmm. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
What are you reaching for? If you're a smoker or vapor, you could be reaching for so much more with Zyn nicotine pouches. When you reach for Zyn, you're reaching for 10 satisfying varieties and 2 strengths for a smoke-free experience that lets you lean in, for chances to break free from your routine, and a unique nationwide community. Whatever you're reaching for, reach for it with America's #1 nicotine pouch brand. Find yours in wherever nicotine products are sold near you. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
We set out from North Devon, still under the veil of night. Both of us had attended the joint birthday party of some mutual friends the night before, and the much-needed early night before the walk had eluded us. I, having offered to drive from the start line, had mercifully not partaken in the local ales that evening, while Lucy had enjoyed a petit Pinot Grigio or 2. We set off in the growing morning light into hazy conditions that promised to burn off later in the day, with the same true of Lucy's wine-based tiredness. A combination of exciting driving conditions and a fresh early autumn breeze soon breathed new life and energy into my fatigued friend. Her brilliant red Land Rover and superior driving skills would likely have made the journey better, but her trust in me and my underpowered hatchback were mercifully not misplaced. By the time we reached Widdicombe in the Moor, we were ready to lace up our boots and get cracking. We were a sight to see in our rather ill-fitting yellow charity shirts and backpacks, but Dartmoor favours the prepared over the fashionable. We set off from the Lich Gate of Widdicombe Church a little before 8:30 a.m. Despite the early hour, Lucy let me tell her an abridged version of the story of the great 1638 storm when ball lightning, or the devil, depending on your belief, wreaked havoc on the Widdicombe worshippers, a story I have told on this podcast just a year before. Any cobwebs still coating our tired minds were soon banished by the first precipitous climb up to the Two Moors Way. The mist still clung to the hilltops, and, as it turns out, against the forecast, a heavy haze would keep the temperatures down all the way around our 14-mile circuit. Out of the gloom emerged the landmarks by which we could navigate. The single cairn of Hameldown Beacon, the dual tumuli of Two Barrows, and soon the gnarled remains of Second World War anti-glider poles stuck out of the last of the heather blanketing the slopes. "You could guess for 1,000,000 years and not guess what those are," I said to Lucy, only for her to get incredibly close on only her second guess. I feigned annoyance, but a shared grin revealed my secret pride that my regular historical bleatings on so many walks may in fact be rubbing off somewhat. Soon, the ruined outline of the medieval Hameldown Cross came into view, and with it, Tor number 1. We had decided to get a photo at each Tor, with us holding up between us the number of fingers corresponding to the Tor we had summited. Cue an awkward photo of us both holding one finger up, and then none, and then finally ribbing each other at the suggestion that neither of us had the 13 fingers to ourselves to signal all the Tors we would visit that day, whatever rude jokes we could make about the breeding of our respective home regions. As we descended from Hameldown Tor to the grey circuit showing the walls of prehistoric Grimspound, we mused on the beliefs of these ancient people. We had earlier skirted around Broad Barrow, one of the largest burial mounds on the moor, and once probably a Neolithic chambered tomb. We wondered how much the people of Grimspound knew from their oral traditions about a barrow which was as ancient to them as Grimpound was to us today. The local folklore calls it, and several similar sites across the moor, the Giant's Grave. And that leads me to talk about the wider giant folklore of Dartmoor. One of my favourites relates to the story of the Trojans and the Devon Giants. Forget for one moment that I am, supposedly, a teacher of history, and instead allow yourself to be immersed in a tale of bravery, treachery, and at length, and by the end of the second episode, a Devonian delicacy. The story goes that after the Trojan Wars, a Trojan warlord by the name of Brutus set sail with his retinue of elite fighting men to discover new lands. After a treacherous voyage, they made port in an inlet on what is now the South Devon coast, pulling their boats up onto the banks of the River Dart at what is now Totnes. The place where Brutus made landfall is to this day marked with a stone, and who am I to argue with that? Brutus named this mysterious new land Britain after himself, and the Trojans were astounded to find the land inhabited by huge beings, some 3 times the size of even the largest warriors in Brutus's band. Undeterred and hardened by years of warfare, the Trojans took on the giants and defeated them in battle. The giants fled over the hills and caves of Dartmoor and the land of Cornwall, west of the River Tamar. During the retreat, the Trojans came upon a wounded giant. His leg bled, and he looked certain to die, taking refuge as he had in a bog on the edge of the moor. The Trojans took pity on him and treated his wounds with the best herbal remedies that their physicians could devise, and soon this giant, Gomergot, recovered from his injuries. It happened that this was the leader of his clan of giants, and a mutual respect grew up between Gomergot and the Trojans. Soon, Brutus proposed a wrestling match between Gomergot and his strongest warrior, an experienced giant slayer by the name of Corineus. In the spirit of goodwill, various of the other Dartmoor giants were invited to witness the match on the slopes of Plymouth Hoe. The Trojans lined up at the eastern side of the field, and the giants to the west, as Gomergot and Corineus circled and sized each other up for the fight. It seemed as if the giant could not fail, but he had not bargained for the canny and experienced foe before him. The fight was evenly balanced. Corineus had the greater skill and agility, but he had not the strength to grapple with his opponent and throw him to the ground. Gomergot had the strength and the stamina, but each time he went to grasp the Trojan warrior, the smaller man could wriggle free and take up a defensive stance once more. Back and forth the battle went until finally Corineus made a mistake and found himself enveloped in the mighty grasp of Gomergot. With a great heave, Gomergot constricted his opponent until several of his ribs cracked with a sound like acorns being crushed beneath a boot. Enraged by the pain and at his own carelessness to so nearly lose the match, Corineus found wells of strength that nobody knew he possessed. He wrapped his arms around the giant's waist, heaved upwards, and threw him down upon the ground with a sound like a gigantic drum. Gomergot, dazed and struggling for breath, was powerless as the victorious Trojan finally lifted his quarry skywards and flung him over the cliffs, where Gomergot's body broke upon the rocks and the waves. The waters of Plymouth Sound and even the Devon soil itself was turned red, drenched with the giant's blood. The other giants, on seeing their brave leader so vanquished, once again fled into Cornwall and the hills of Dartmoor, this time for good, leaving the rest of Britain for Brutus. The giants were defeated and eventually died out. Yet for centuries it was said that they continued to make their homes in the high and unforgiving places of the country. Today, all that remains are the huge mounds that form their tombs. So what was Broad Barrow? Was it, as the archaeologists would have you believe, a tomb to several ancient people of high status? Or was it, as the ancient farmers of Dartmoor would tell, the home of the eternally slumbering remains of one of Gomergot's giant tribe?
I love giant stories.
Oh, brilliant,
I
aren't they?
love them so much. So I actually was talking today to a lovely lady called Mary from the Outer Hebrides.
Mhm.
We were talking about giant folklore.
Yeah.
And we have a giant called Fionn McCool or Finn McCool. And that is like a shared folklore with the Outer Hebrides, which is amazing.
Yeah, that is incredible. But then the trading links by sea were so much better than they were by land. It makes complete sense.
Yeah, it's amazing. And like they're all over the world, those stories of giants and giant people. And, you know, you often hear about them in particular in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
I do think that's interesting. I mean, sometimes we can kind of put it down to explanations of sort of feats of engineering and strength that don't seem like they would be possible with people. But of course, people, when they all collaborate together, can achieve incredible things. But there's various things I really like about this story, which you can kind of work out what the historical basis might be for them. Now, if you want to believe that this is just a true story about giant fighting, then absolutely
yes, I do.
I'm not going to change that for you. However, an alternative view might be this. It's talking about Gomagot's body being dashed on the rocks and then the seawater turning red. Well, this does happen from time to time. If there's been severe flooding upriver from the River Tamar, which empties out into the sea at Plymouth, you do get a lot of mud washed into the water there. And it will
I was going to say, is it like a sediment?
Absolutely, yeah. And there are certain parts of Devon itself, admittedly not necessarily these bits, but certain parts of Devon itself, where the soil is an incredibly rich red, orangey colour. It's very rich, fertile soil. It's the remains of an ancient seabed, basically. But it's incredibly red. I mean, much more red than you'd really expect. If you Google for images of red Devon soil, you'll see that it is very unusually red. It almost looks like a kind of a desert sand. And so you can imagine that this is, again, an origin of this. But more realistically, we do know that various invading armies throughout history have banished the indigenous people who were there to the extremes of the country. And that was certainly true of the Brythonic peoples who lived on these islands in the time before the arrival, for example, of the Romans. And then the Romano-British being pushed westwards by the arrival of the Anglo-Saxon tribes, the Jutes, and so forth. And so there's a parallel there with the story of the giants fleeing west, like the real historical people did. And as for fleeing into the hills, well, nobody lives there. So who is to say that the giants aren't really there? That's the joy of the story, I think.
Yeah, and I think it is really fascinating that this idea of giant people is somewhat universal and also reflective of a kind of conquering people coming in and being like, yes, we drove them into the hills or whatever, and it's like, yes, they were giants. They were really,
we did really well.
We did really well. Yeah, it was really scary actually, and I'm glad they're gone.
Now that is not the last giant tale that I'm going to tell on this particular trip, because the very last one is as well, but it's at a completely different tone, and I absolutely love it as well. And there was a little hint there about Devon delicacies, but you'll have to wait and see to find out what I'm talking about there. Shall we continue with our walk?
Let's continue.
Fortified by tales of prehistoric people and ancient giants, and in my case a honey and oat biscuit, Lucy and I took a sharp turn towards the southeast. We descended into a more sheltered valley, passing a lonely memorial to a wartime plane crash and crossing a shallow ford, and making a fuss of a collie dog as we went. Soon our route took us along the edge of the woodland and into a narrow yet deep sunken footpath of obvious antiquity. I had walked this path before and knew that it led to the old Maniton crossroads, at which could be found the poignant grave of Kitty J. This story was one of the very first I ever told on Real Life Ghost Stories way back in 2020, and I'll give you a very brief version of it again, much as I said to my walking buddy as we made good pace through the rock and leaf-strewn path. Kitty J had been a local farm worker at nearby Maniton who had fallen for a young man on the estate. He had promised to marry her, and she had become pregnant by him. But he betrayed her and left. Unsupported in her devastation by her community, who instead shamed and shunned her, she took her own life. The local people buried her, and so expected an end to the unhappy tale and any memory of Kitty J. However, Kitty J's grave, in common with others on Dartmoor, such as Stephen's grave at the other end of the moor, are a sad reminder of a heartless practice. Local people feared that the soul of one who had completed suicide would return as a ghost and make their way back to their home to haunt those who had tormented them in life. As such, Kitty J was buried at the centre of a crossroads so that her wandering spirit might be confused as to which way to go. Some years later, in the 19th century, works were conducted to improve the main road that crossed her grave, and Kitty J's remains were uncovered. Knowing the story and pitying her, the workers reburied her to one side with a modest grave of curbstones and a small, unmarked granite headstone. At last, Kitty J was remembered and given some dignity that was always denied to her before. I told Lucy this story, and we agreed that while the story was a sad one, it was good that Kitty J was now remembered, and we wondered if the final part of the legend would be as true that day as it had been every other time I had visited, that being the fact that every morning fresh flowers appeared upon the grave. Sure enough, as we fastened the small gate behind us and rounded the base of the grave, we saw fresh yellow flowers and, more incongruously, a chocolate-smothered cupcake with sprinkles. Perhaps the Dartmoor Piskies, who allegedly are the ones who leave the flowers, have in recent times become bakers too. A little reminder of the Kitty J story there, because people always love it, and it's a sad story, but it's such a famous one.
It is, like you're right, it's such an incredibly sad story, but now isn't it wonderful that her name is being spoken of all the time, constantly,
Absolutely.
in relation to Dartmoor, and that her memory lives on.
And I think that we are so correctly contemptuous of those attitudes that put her remains in that position in the first place. And a reminder of just how far we've come, but also how far we've got to go. But it's true. Every time I've been there have been fresh flowers, and I'm not going to ask any questions as to where they come from. I just love the fact that the tradition is there. And I love the fact that her memory lives on through that tradition. I think it's wonderful.
I think it's absolutely glorious. I mean, we can all say that it is the Piskies who are leaving the flowers on the grave. Of course we can. And inexplicably a chocolate cupcake. Listen, who are we to judge? We do know as well that, you know, the Piskies and the fairy folk and whatever, they do like sweet things. So if I'm ever feeling a bit like I've annoyed the fairy folk, I will leave out honey for them. So maybe there was an element of that to it. However, we could, like you said, we could talk forever. We could be like, who is doing that? Is it like, who are the people who are doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
What matters is that every time you've been there have been fresh flowers on that grave, and that is beautiful.
And however beautiful you think this particular location is, it's nicer even than that. It is just gorgeous. You couldn't, if you put it into a picture book and painted it, people would just say, well, no, that's just can't be true. Because of the road I've described going through there was improved in the 19th century. I can promise you it's not been improved since. It's tiny. There's hardly any traffic going along there, although, funnily enough, it was our way onto the moor, and we drove past it earlier, and Lucy had to look out for Kitty J's grave before we got there. But that was in first light, and there were already fresh flowers on it when we drove past, just as dawn was breaking on that day. But you've got this beautiful little wicket gate behind with these gnarled Dartmoor oak trees and grass banks, and the grave is perfectly kept itself. And on the other side, you've got the grasses and the heathers and the gorse bushes. And it's right in the middle of nowhere. It is a genuinely peaceful and gorgeous place. So do look it up if you would like to have an idea as to what it looks like, because it's a special, special place.
Yeah, it is a very beautiful place. I've not been physically, personally, but I've seen pictures of it.
We're going to put that right one day, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Absolutely.
Well, before we do that, though, I better move on to our next location, because we've got 13 tours to cover. I've actually only covered one so far, but that's because the first few are incredibly widely split. So we'll have a look at the next story, shall we?
Let's get into it.
Leaving Jay's grave behind, we advanced down a rare strip of tarmac to tour number 2. The first 2 tours were the most widely spread, and by the time we reached the gaudy yellow snack tent at the base of Hound Tor, we had already covered 6 of the 14 miles of our trek. From here, the tours would come thick and fast, so we took the opportunity to take a break and enjoy some free cheese and onion crisps and a cup of strong tea. The additional weight of the insulated bottle of boiling water was well worth it. Science cannot explain it, but tea just tastes better in the outdoors. Behind us were views down the hillside to prehistoric cairn circles and low dry stone walls, penning in the lazily munching belted Galloway cattle. But the rock on which we were perched instead had us facing the tor itself. Hound Tor is not the highest or the least accessible tor on Dartmoor, but it is one of the most dramatic nonetheless. Its massive boulders dominate the skyline for miles around, being quite distinct from the other tors. The silhouette, from the right angle and with an eye of faith, gives the appearance of great battlements with canine heads protruding over the top, hence the name Hound Tor. If this etymology is to be believed, then it must be of significant antiquity. The word tor comes from the ancient Welsh or Brythonic word tur, meaning stack, and the hund is from the Old English of the Anglo-Saxons. Indeed, the settlement of Hunda Tora appears in the Domesday Book of 1086. As Lucy tucked into a small pot of jelly that reminded her of her hospital meals which she had encountered as a trainee nurse, and I demolished a rather more substantial leek and potato pasty, our break was pleasantly interrupted by some dogs running by, doubtless attracted by the prospect of crumbs. While a pang of regret hung about us that we had been forbidden by the organisers from bringing our usual walking companion, Lola the Springer Spaniel, with us, I'm reminded of the legendary origin of Hound Tor. The legend goes that there was a local hunter by the name of Bowerman. He delighted in leaving home at dusk with his boisterous pack of hunting hounds and charging up and down the hillsides in pursuit of hares. On one such trip, Bowerman and his dogs charged through a coven of witches on the slopes of the moor, mid-ceremony, in a rather less polite way than we had been interrupted in the present day. The cauldron was spilled, the fire doused, and the witches scattered. They vowed their revenge on Bowerman. On a subsequent evening, one witch disguised herself as a hare and led Bowerman and his dogs into a treacherous mire where they sank and became stuck. Then, with a crack of lightning, the dogs were turned to stone, later being eroded into the formation seen today at Hound Tor, while Bowerman himself was transfixed about half a mile away where a vaguely anthropomorphic outcrop exists, known to this day as Bowerman's Nose. Our lunch completed and our second photograph taken, my hiking pal and I continued over the top of Hound Tor with our next hilltop already in sight. Just ahead of that, though, were the ghostly outlines of medieval longhouses, some still showing the signs of bakehouses and drains from the animal pens amongst the low, moss-strewn walls. This was the abandoned village of Hound Tor, previously mentioned. There are hundreds of deserted or shrunken medieval villages all over the United Kingdom. Popular belief often attributes their demise to the mortality of the Black Death in the 14th century, where in truth the blame really lies more often on shifting economic and social forces and callous landlords. In the case of Hound Tor, however, there is some evidence that it was abandoned in around 1350, at precisely the time that the Black Death arrived on English shores just a few miles to the south. The idea of such a devastating pestilence wiping out so ancient a village might be just more chilling than any ghost story that the moor has to offer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. There is at home, I didn't know this until recently, so where I'm from is a place called Laois, and there's a mountain range called the Schlieve Mountains, right? And I did not know this, but like literally maybe last year my dad was like, do you know there's an abandoned plague village up in the mountains? And I was like, what? No. And he was like, yeah, there's a whole abandoned village and it's said to be a plague village. Like that, it was, you know, like those legends often go that the plague wiped everybody out. But actually, like you said, it was more likely to do with people emigrating, people leaving, you know, socioeconomic reasons, landlords, etc. And obviously,
and the landlord's just saying, actually, I make more money off sheep than I do off people.
Yeah, and exactly. You know, bugger off. So that is really interesting. But it is interesting to hear a story where it's like, oh no, there is actually evidence that this was to do with the plague. Like,
there's not complete historical consensus on it, but it is one pretty credible theory in this particular location.
Yeah.
Because the economic forces that would normally force the abandonment of some places like that, and occasionally the changes in climate which would do that as well. It was probably already struggling just before the Black Death. It's often forgotten that there was a great mortality of famine in 1309, I think it was, just before the Black Death, which likely weakened the population. And various other disasters going on at the time in a way that is simply just unimaginable to us today in its scale. But Hound Tor does appear to have succumbed to the plague, or at the very least, the plague is what saw off an already struggling village. But it's so spooky. Nothing's been done with it since. And we remarked several times as we were walking around, because walking up these various hills, you do see these incredible views, and you can see down a very long way sometimes. And we kept on seeing the evidence of medieval ploughing on the hillsides, on hills that have not been put to any use other than grazing for 600, 700, 800 years sometimes.
I mean, that's amazing.
It's incredible. And you still see the ridge and furrow ploughing that you get from an ox-drawn plough, which is incredibly distinctive, and thinking, well, there's only reason that's still been there is because no modern plough has touched that. And you've got to see them in the right light. And well, she's very well trained by my historical chats these days. But even Lucy was pointing out by the end, going, "Oh, no, I've seen more over there," and it's filled with reminders of what went before on Dartmoor.
And do you know what I really liked about that story about the dogs and the witches, right? Obviously,
there's a crack at that one. Yeah, let's get back to that.
Love a witch story, always. And witch that turns into a hare, brilliant, excellent. What strikes me is that all throughout history, since the dawn of time, we're just storytellers. Like, we're just storytellers. You can imagine, back in the day, kids being like, "Oh, where did that rock come from? What does that rock mean?" And parents being like, "Oh, well, let me tell you a story, because you see how they look like dogs. Well, basically, they were, you know what I mean?" And that's been passed down until now. And I think
I first heard that story when I was about 8 years old, and it's always stayed with me.
Like, I think it's amazing that we, as creators and podcasters and historians and whatever, that we go some way to maintaining and preserving those stories. Like, your stories of Devon and your stories of the Moors in particular, are immortalized on this podcast there, because they're never going to go anywhere. They will always exist, and I think that is incredible. Really thought about it
that way.
Yeah,
it's just it's my turn to tell the story, I guess, isn't it?
It's your turn to tell the story, and but that story is going to be there. In, I don't know what's going to happen. None of us know what's going to happen with the state of the world. But in 50 years' time, if somebody's looking up stories about Dartmoor, are they going to come across your podcasts from 50 years ago and be like, "Oh wow, this is a really interesting legend about Dartmoor"? And I think it's fascinating.
Goodness, but you know what? It's strange, isn't it? With someone whose brain is sort of so wired towards the sources and where you get them from, I hadn't really considered the fact that I'm creating my own sort of document, or we are creating our own document of these stories that previously have been told around a fireplace. And I suppose the podcast is the modern day gathering around the fireplace, isn't it? What a great thing to think of. Yeah,
it literally is that. And this is all off the back of, I don't know if I mentioned on this episode. Yes, I did, about talking to the lovely Mary from the Outer Hebrides today, and they were talking about creating there's a whole project thing anyway, and a part of that is the preservation of oral tradition and the preservation of stories that have been passed down from generation to generation and that are at risk of being lost. And that is what this is. I mean, that story about the dogs and the witches and the dogs being sort of frozen in time in this rock face and whatever, what that must have been told countless times.
I mean, goodness knows how
over the millennia. Do you know what I mean? Like, how many times has that story been told? And we're still here telling it, because all we are as people, we're just storytellers.
I mean, if we're honest, there are certain kind of modern-ish sort of 19th century tropes about the witches within that. But actually, you look at the story and the names, and you look at the practice of hunting hares on Dartmoor, and that's the sort of thing that really goes back about 1,000 years.
Yeah,
if not earlier, but it would certainly go back about 1,000 years. And so much about Hunda Torah is very sort of mixing the Saxon with the indigenous British language. And when I say indigenous British, I'm really talking about the sort of Welsh-speaking British in a really broad sense. The family of languages there, including Welsh, Cornish, of course, Breton, and those related languages. You get reminders of that in the West Country. Of course, geographically, you just don't get elsewhere.
Yeah.
And this might be really, really unlikely, but if there's even a chance that is where it comes from, I just love it. And it's all around you. You just need to look and sometimes question and say, where did this weird name come from? There's got to be a story behind it.
And even you're pointing out that the kind of traditions around witches are probably a later addition to the story. But even that is fantastic, because you're tracking how stories change over time. Absolutely. And that's what good storytelling is. They get embellished, they get adapted, they get changed in order to appeal to the contemporary audience. It's just fascinating.
And I think sometimes as well, we do get understandably and rightly preoccupied with the witch folklore and the witch trials and all the injustices of that, of sort of the 16th and 17th centuries.
Yes.
And rightly so, because I think there's, of course, the historical reappraisal of those attitudes and the condemnation, rightly, of some of the monstrous things that happened to women at that time, can often distract us actually from the much earlier witch folklore that we get from other historical sources that paints it in a very, very different light. I'm reminded, for example, this is something I once spoke to with Sinead and Nick on the Poisonous Cabinet about this. We looked at the story of Hereward the Wake, which is another one of these slightly folk tales, but actually has a much more strong historical basis for a rebellion against early Norman rule in the 1070s in East Anglia. Now, Dartmoor is inaccessible because it's so hilly and it's so remote and it's so sparsely populated. But in the same way, the fens of East Anglia, so many of which have been drained since that time, if you look at a map of all the settlements listed in the Domesday Book, you'll see that East Anglia's got hardly any on there because it just wasn't reclaimed yet. It was just bog and fenland and awfulness. And Hereward, whose name literally means the guardian of the army, was avenging the murder of two of his brothers having returned from exile by Norman soldiers, that he led a really quite successful rebellion against William the Conqueror until eventually being betrayed by local knowledge and being captured on his island. And no one really knows if he got away or whether he's put to death because the historical sources don't tell us. The theory is he might come back one day. But within that story, one of the things that it is alleged that William the Conqueror tries is he gets a witch to curse the island. This is the island of the Eels, Ely in East Anglia. And he builds a timber tower for the witch to go up. And it is said that the witch would stand up there, howling and cackling and giving all these awful incantations, and then finishing it by turning around and, depending on what source you read, bearing her bare buttocks at the enemy, and sometimes even giving a good fart for good measure.
Oh, good for her.
But she's there as an employee of the king, essentially as a weapon of psychological warfare. She's not seen as one of the bogeymen in the sense that she's not supporting the king. She's actually employed for her magical services, not someone who is persecuted for them. I'm sorry to say it does meet with a grisly end, though, because the Saxon rebels do get across the fenland, and in the middle of the night they burn down the tower with her in it.
Okay, less good.
Less good. Doesn't end so well for her. But the thing about that story is, the point with it is not that she's a witch and she's some malign character within it. She is just another of the combatants in this desperate fight, and it's just a part of the story.
And I kind of love that. If I'm spending the end of my days terrifying men, I'm into it.
And if your story lasts for over almost 1,000 years, then that's just as well, isn't it? She's another one of these people who's still remembered. I hadn't even prepared to include that story, but I hope people have enjoyed it. Is that history, folklore? I don't know. When you go that far back, the lines are rather blurred, aren't they?
Yeah, everything gets a bit blurry, doesn't it?
Really does. We're probably about half an hour into this now. Now, we've said that this might be a slightly shorter episode, but that might be a convenient place to stop, because I know from the walk itself, we're on tour number 2, don't forget. But all the others come very, very thick and fast in the second half of our walk. And this was a very natural stopping place for us on our walk. And so maybe this is where we should pause for now.
Tim, thank you so much for sharing your stories. We've gone from giants to witches to dogs being frozen to Kitty J's grave, which is obviously very important. And
even a mention of Widdicombe Church getting hit by ball lightning as well.
Yes, which is a story that I tell people all the time because I adore it.
It's so good.
Finally, a witch bearing her arse and farting at soldiers. I mean, brilliant. Like, what more could you want?
I'm not going to top that next episode, am I?
No, you're. I actually don't know if you are.
Well, only one way to find out. Cliffhanger.
Yeah, tune in tomorrow. So, Tim, thank you. It has been an absolute joy. Where can people find you if they wish to find you?
They can find me on my YouTube channel, which is Mr. Cloke History on YouTube. I do lots of stuff for the British school curriculum on there, but I understand that my rapid revision videos do make quite a nice podcast style playlist as well. So have a look at what I've got there. There's a variety of US and British and world history topics on there. Give it a try. Also, you can find me at Dry Wipe History on Instagram as well. You'd be very welcome to drop me a follow there as well.
Tim, thank you so much, and I shall see you tomorrow.
Speak soon. Bye-bye.
What are you reaching for? If you're a smoker or vapor, you could be reaching for so much more with Zyn nicotine pouches. When you reach for Zyn, you're reaching for 10 satisfying varieties and 2 strengths for a smoke-free experience that lets you lean in, for chances to break free from your routine, and a unique nationwide community. Whatever you're reaching for, reach for it with America's #1 nicotine pouch brand. Find yours in wherever nicotine products are sold near you. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.